It's only occurred to me recently, I should have been much quicker here. Didn't Jesus say exactly the same thing? Before the second coming, you've got to have what? The abomination of desolation. Telling where he, masculine pronoun there, ought not to. It only occurred to me as I was driving to Sarah's house 3 or 4 weeks ago. I thought, my goodness, Paul is dealing with the same thing, right? And then think of Luke 19. They thought the kingdom of God was going to come, what? What's the next word there? In Luke 19.
Immediately.
They thought, here's the Messiah standing about, 3 or 4 miles, I think 6 kilometers from Jerusalem, right? In Jericho. So they thought, wow, time for the kingdom. And so he had to tell them the kingdom of God is not going to come immediately. So what did he then do? He told them this brilliant parable. I used to say to students, you want to preach this every Sunday 5, 6 times. By which I mean, are you getting your people to learn this? They mostly weren't. So I have to go off and get the kingdom and then come back, and then I'm going to kill off the people who don't want me to rule over them. You read that? Isn't that marvelous? And then I'm going to reward the faithful with positions in the kingdom. This is brilliant stuff. But that word immediately is key. So we're going to see in a moment in Matthew 24, Jesus was asked about the parousia. I'm going to use this word. Parousia. That's the second coming. Not presence. It is presence. I mean, if you understand what it means. I mean, Kay came today. She's present, and she also came. That's clear. However, don't use the word presence because the Jehovah's Witnesses say it happened. There's only 9, 10 million of your friends out there who believe that it came in 1914 or maybe in 1918, secretly. How about your pre-Great Tribulation rapture people, that's most of your evangelicals in the South at least, who believe that Christ could come back today secretly? Got it? Secret present. How many parousias would that be? Got it? If you want to make things confused, you turn all the ones into twos. Jesus has one nature, he's a human being. No, he's got 2 natures, that's 2, right? One God, we turned it into 2, we believe in 2 gods. This idiot here believed that. Yes, I did. How bad is that? Everything one is turned into 2. You've got mass confusion. So now instead of having one parousia, one second coming, you've got 2. It's called the pre-Great Tribulation rapture. Now, worse than that, they've stolen the word rapture. We all believe in a catching up to meet the Lord in 1 Thessalonians 4. We believe in a catching up. There's no noun rapture in the Bible. There's only a verb, catching up. No noun. We all believe in that. But now they've stolen the word rapture and applied it to that non-existent pre-tribulation rapture. See? Isn't that clever? The devil is a master at confusion of language. We must get these words clear. That's what I'm going to attempt to do today. All of this arises out of an intensive discussion with a historicist. That's a person who thinks that much of Matthew 24 was fulfilled in 70 AD. Not all of it, but most of it. I think that's wrong too. I'm going to show you why I think that's wrong. But it came out of an intense discussion. You learn by intense discussion. We had you've seen emails, sir. I mean, it's thousands of words with a dear lady who's working at this. It's by interaction, it's by meditating on the word day and night, right? Being very much consumed with it that you get clarity, maybe. So let's talk about Matthew 24. By all means, interact with us out there if you want to. My thesis is this. Matthew 24, and you know the parallel in Mark 13 and the parallel in Luke 21. Matthew 24, Mark 13, Luke 21. You've got 3 corroborating accounts of the same events. 3. That's interesting. That could suggest it's important. How about this? The Sermon on the Mount is, what, 3 or 4 chapters. Is it important? I would think so. How about what Jesus has to say about the future? Matthew 24, 25, 2 complete chapters. Is this important? Oh, no, I don't do prophecy. You get this all the time. Oh, no, I don't do prophecy. What? So you don't do the mind of Christ. That's 1 Corinthians 2:16 says we're to have the mind of Christ. Well, where do you get the mind of Christ? You get it from the words of Christ. See? These are easy things, but they're not being said very clearly. So there's nothing wrong in studying Matthew 24, which is an extended speech, lecture, discourse, right? From Messiah himself. So here's how the story goes.
Teaching.
It's a teaching.
Presenting and teaching this.
Out there, they don't really believe in the teaching of Jesus for themselves. It's called dispensationalism. Teaches that no, the teaching for you is really the late letters of Paul. That's ultra-dispensationalism, if you want the terms, that only the late letters of Paul really count. Dispensationalism says something equally bad, that only the letters of Paul really count, Jesus doesn't. He was teaching to Jews, come on, doesn't he say, listen to the argument, how clever this is. The argument is, I was only sent to the lost tribes of the house of Israel. There you go. The teaching of Jesus is not for you. That's massively out there in Baptist churches. It is. Underlying. Don't say it maybe, but that's what they imply. That's very bad. The answer is that in the Great Commission in Matthew 28, he says, go into the whole world, teach them everything I taught you, right? And I will be with you till 70 AD. I don't think so. Until the end of the age. Once you confuse these basic terms, if you think I'm talking about the United Stamp Association when I say USA, you're not going to be listening carefully, you're not going to be understanding it. We must define the terms. So, there will be a kingdom of God on the earth when Christ comes back. That's Daniel 7 for your friends. Daniel 7 always would begin there. Daniel 7, verses 18, 22, 27. It's going to be under the whole heaven. That would seem to me on the earth, wouldn't it? And the saints are going to rule, and all the nations are going to have to obey the saints. And the translation's a little frightened there, but the Hebrew is clear. All nations are going to have to serve God and Jesus and the saints. What? That's not something they want to preach very much. That's in Daniel 7. So you can start with Daniel 7, then you can do Daniel 2:44. It says the fifth kingdom will be the kingdom of God. Isn't that beautiful? If that happened in 70 AD, what happened to your ruling with Christ? That's the way to go with this argument, right? Well, wait a minute. You say all of this happened, this is preterism, which says that the kingdom of God was established in 70 AD, preterism, which is a technical term for pastism, right? It's all over. Or, I don't like the future, so I'll put it behind me. That's amazing. So preterism is obviously wrong. So, the key point that you can go at, if you're dialoguing with somebody, is, are you ruling the world with Christ right now? If you're not, the kingdom hasn't come. Yes, the spirit of the kingdom is present now. We understand that. Absolutely. But the kingdom itself, properly speaking, as the French say, proprement dit, in its real sense, hasn't come because you're not ruling the world yet. If you think you are, think again. Paul said, or the Son of Man said, I don't have a place even to put my head up, pillar. You must be kidding. I'm ruling the world. I don't think so. You see how easy this is when you see it and how demented it is when you don't see it. So all of this is our battle then for truth. Let's talk about Matthew 24 and go to the beginning of that chapter a moment.
I'm getting one comment here.
Yes, already.
Apparently the internet's been kind of going in and out.
Oh dear.
A little bit sketchy. And so somebody named Greg R. We have several people on here this time. I don't know who these folks are. So hello to all of you. He says, Prince of the Power of the Airwaves.
Of course. Excellent. And there he's addressing our Christadelphian friends who say, you are the devil. You've got a lot of work to do. There are thousands of Christadelphians out there. What are you doing to help them? We've won a couple recently. They were taught on pain of salvation that you're the devil. There is no devil. How bad is that? I mean, error is not a joke, because it says if you twist the scriptures, it's to your own apolia, awful Greek word. Destruction. You're headed for destruction if you're going to twist the scriptures and say the devil is in your heart only. That's just terribly wrong. So this correspondent here kindly says, the prince of the power of the air, aera in Greek, is the sublunar space. The devil is in charge of that area. And he's got his hordes of spiritual, wicked, fallen angels with him. And he watches us human beings. We're not that smart sometimes. And he says, how can I get them messed up? Well, one thing would be to take your hope away and say, Christ came back in 70 AD. Okay, let's look at that then. Matthew 24, Mark 13, and Luke 21. Jesus came out from the temple, we got the story there, and said to them, you see all these buildings, don't you? Let me tell you this, I'm reading myself purposely here. Not one of them will be left upon another which will not be torn down. Verse 3, as he was sitting on the Mount of Olives, that's interesting because that's where he comes back. The Mount of Olives, his feet will stand in that day on the Mount of Olives, which is east of Jerusalem, looking west to the temple there. As he was sitting appropriately on the Mount of Olives of this second coming discourse, his students came. Disciples are students. Those who learn with his students came to him. And they asked him a question. When will these things happen? As trouble in the temple, falling of buildings, right? And what will be the sign of your parousia? Let's get used to that wonderful word, second coming. The word parousia is 24 times in the New Testament. Not always Jesus coming. Paul's coming sometimes. Silas is coming. But when used of Jesus, parousia, it always means the one single visible coming of Jesus. Isn't that easy? So they said to him, okay, Jesus, I heard you just talk about this, these buildings are going to be ruined. Then they asked the question, good students. And they said, what will be the sign of your parousia and end of the age? For a little technical point here, there's no article, not the end of the age. It's all one idea, you get it? What will be the sign of your coming and end of the age? Sign of your coming and end of the age. It's one idea. There's a place for technical things in the language. There's not two ideas. It's not what will be the sign when all this is going to happen and what will be the sign of your parousia, that's one thing, and the end of the age is something different. No, it's the same thing. So first study would be with your friends to show them at the end of the age, all 5 times in Matthew refers to the second coming. End of the age, that's quite clear. They don't have audio. That's a shame. We'll have to do this again.
The internet's playing up.
Power of the airwaves is...
Okay, we're going to do it again.
I can't hear it.
Sure you don't want me to restart?
See, we have internet, but for some reason
Okay.
the
Well,
streaming, so
we're going...
We're able to talk, but I can't sit here and type everything you say.
No. We'll have to do it till we get it clear, but you see the point there. What will be the sign of your parousia and end of age? It's clear to you guys. It's clear to you. You can spend the rest, you can spend the weeks.
yeah, we'll post this later onto YouTube.
Okay, we are recording it then.
Yeah,
Good.
it's always recorded.
So, in the mind of those students, I want you to see this. They think that trouble in the temple means the second coming. That's not wrong, actually. They got that out of the Old Testament. Daniel particularly. They knew that. It's not a dumb question. The question is, did Jesus correct that? Where? Not there. He doesn't. If you look at the discourse, the speech that he then gives, it's called, it's a seamless whole. You find me the place in his discourse which shows, well, this part refers to 70 AD, and this part, you can't do it. You'll find the commentators cannot decide what to do. No, it's one seamless whole. Why? Because Jesus had been reading Daniel and Zechariah and all the prophets. Jesus' mind was filled with the prophets, and he'd read Daniel. He says, pay attention to Daniel, right here. And he knew. So, trouble in the temple means the second coming. As it turns out, I'm going to suggest to you, 70 AD was not it, right? As it turns out. Well, wait a minute. Jesus didn't know himself. He said that in Acts 1:7. He said, it's not for you to know the long periods of time. I don't know the day and the hour, Jesus said. What he did know was the signs of when it's going to happen. You see that? So he didn't know. As far as he knew, there could be 15 different temples there. Now, this is a bit of a new thing, but think about how this might work. He does know, though, the signs that are going to precede it, and he answers that question. Try that as a model. Don't ask, Try to see if it works. It's easier than trying to say, well, this bit refers to 70 AD, and this bit, it doesn't work well. Supposing it's a seamless whole, and that question was not wrong. Then he starts, don't be deceived. Isn't that interesting? Isn't that awfully like Paul? I'm going to connect with Paul now. Paul says, watch out, you're being deceived. You're being taken in. Jesus starts with the same thing. Do not be fooled. What would be the good English words? Bamboozled? Scammed? That's our first warning, right? Don't be scammed. Because many will come, he says, there, in my name, probably meaning representing me, probably not saying I'm the Messiah. At least very few people have done that. Some have. The idea would probably be many will come representing me and saying I'm Messiah, I'm representing Messiah. Probably that's right. If not, people literally saying I'm the Messiah, which has happened occasionally. Okay, did you know then that the signs of the moon and the stars, what is it? The 1st of Tishri, this is an email. If the wise men from the east who saw the star of Bethlehem and recognized it as his sign in heaven were alive today, if they were, they would be listening for the last trumpet at twilight, twinkling lights, during the Feast of Trumpets next month.
That's it, huh?
That's it.
We'll be here.
That's going to be 1st of Tishri is the second coming.
Great. Can't wait.
Let's wait and see if he's right. I don't think he's right. Okay, there's the question. Jesus answers, don't get deceived. Verse 6, hearing of wars, rumors of wars, that tends to suggest civil wars. References in the Old Testament talk about civil wars, but it can include world wars, certainly. Wars generally. See that you don't get scared in verse 6. For those things must take place, but that is not what? The end. Now, has he switched the meaning of end there? Obviously not, right? They asked about the end of the age. Verse 6, this is not the end. Is it clear? Not the end. So some people say, well, he means a different end there. What? That's the way you deceive people. It's called equivocation. You change the meaning word in mid-sentence, right? Like you call rapture, use the word rapture to mean a pre-trib rapture. See, that's very confusing. If we do that in any conversation, we deceive people. So the end must be the end of the age, and not yet. Because nation, again, this is world wars, clearly.
That would be a Trumpism.
Well, yeah, I hope Trump doesn't engage in that. But all these things, look at 8 now. All these things, what he's described, world wars, are merely the beginning of birth pangs. That's a key thing. Everybody who knows anything about Jewish background knows that Jews believe in the Chavle HaMashiach. That's the birth pangs for the Messianic kingdom. Got it? Before the word is reborn, right, which it will be at the second coming, guess what? It's going to be convulsed. You see that? It's a very Jewish expression. So, the beginning, the birth pangs are these awful things. They're not exactly explicit. We had terrible world wars in this century, last century, I mean. So that's not exactly explicit, but we watch that with interest. All these things are merely the beginning of the Chavle HaMashiach, the birth pangs of the Messiah.
Anthony?
Yes.
Before you go any further?
Yes, ma'am.
I just wanted to mention something that I
Mhm.
have in my margins of,
Mhm.
from a previous study.
Mhm.
And it talks about how what's listed in these few verses corresponds to the seals in Revelation.
Yes, almost
So,
certainly. That's right.
Where it has in verse 5, many will come saying, I am the
Mhm,
Christ.
mhm.
That
Mhm.
coincides with the first seal, which is false
Yes.
Christ, Revelation 6, 1 and 2.
Apparently. I think that's probably right. That would be a good
Okay.
thing if we did Revelation. Jesus
Yeah.
repeats this
Yeah.
in...
And I just list them in case anybody wants to look them up.
Yes, list the...
It's, yeah, just quickly. War, verse 6, wars
Yep.
and rivers of wars. The second seal,
Mhm.
war, which is Revelation 6, 3 and 4.
Mhm.
The third seal is verse 7, famine,
Yes.
Revelation 6, 5.
Mhm.
And fourth is death, you know,
Yes.
which
Pestilence
they
which
will deliver you
follows.
over the tribulation and
Yeah.
kill you, verse 9.
Yes.
And that's death, the fourth seal possibly.
Got it. This is not a happy story, but it gets to be exciting at the end of it. Turns out well. Okay, so then they will deliver you to tribulation. That's not the Great Tribulation yet. Tribulation, certainly. And will kill you, some of you that is. And you will be hated by all nations because of me, my name. Not hard to say my name in Hebrew. My name, my personality, right? They're taking a dig at the people who say you must say Yahshua or Yeshua to be saved. That's not right. My name would be everything I stand for. At that time, verse 10, many are going to fall away. They're going to become faded members of the church. They'll just give up. So this is too much. And will betray one another and hate one another. That's awful, isn't it? It's awful. It's not a pretty story. Yeah.
So in this verse 9,
Mm-hmm.
they will deliver you. Who are the you?
You Christians.
You Christians,
Yeah.
us, whoever's
That's
alive.
whoever's
at that
alive.
time that are Christians.
It's a good point, yes.
to tribulation.
Yes.
They will not. You will not be raptured before
No.
this tribulation.
No.
And not
This
experience tribulation, as I
No.
learned in other churches.
14:22 says, of Acts 14:22 says, through much tribulation we're destined to enter the kingdom. That's not the Great Tribulation, but tribulation is part of Christian life. You're going to get hated and killed even now. But it gets worse. It comes to a climax, as he goes on to say. Then you've got, what? Many false prophets, fake Bible teachers, will arise. And they will mislead many. It's a rather depressing picture. 12. Because lawlessness, that's failure to obey Jesus in the new Torah of Jesus, because that's increased, most people's love is going to get cold. 13, but the one who endures to the end. Now there, I grant the word end could be the end of his life, all right? Persisting. Or second coming, either one. There you can say the word end could be up to the end of his life, till the end, whatever, it doesn't matter. 14, this gospel about the kingdom, most important, this gospel, that's to say the gospel we all recognize as the gospel of the kingdom. Listen carefully to evangelical preaching, you don't hear the phrase gospel of the kingdom. If you do, it's very surprising. This gospel of the kingdom will be preached, heralded, trumpeted, heralded in the whole wide world as a witness. That's good, isn't it? God is taking the world to court. God is prosecuting the world. So listen, I've got a kingdom coming. You all listen, wake up, repent, and be baptized, right? Believe the kingdom. So it's a testimony to the whole world. And then he says, and then the end will come. What end is that? Different from the third verse? No. The question was, what's the end of the age, right? Then, now we're really on the brink of the end. It's very clear. Now, the question in your mind is this 70 AD? Let's see what we think. Then the end will come, verse 15. Therefore when? See the therefore? Somebody said in the church regarding us, always see what the therefore is there for. When you therefore, in good English, consequently when, right? Then the end will come, when you therefore see. I would paraphrase like this. Then the end will come, this is what the end is going to look like. Got it? Therefore. The therefore connector is most important there. Consequently, when you see, whoever it is who's alive then, and Jesus didn't know, I don't think he knew, the long time. That's Acts 1:7, not for you to know the times and seasons. He doesn't know. You would be any Christians, believers who are alive at that time, when you see the A of D, the Shikut HaShomem. That is the most disgusting thing you can think of. Now, imagine the most revolting, despicable, disgusting thing. That's what the Shikut HaShomem is in Hebrew. It's an idol. When you start putting an idol in God's temple, that's the time to be terrified, right? When you substitute the wrong God for the right God, that's the Shikut HaShomem. In Greek, the Bdeligmatis Eremosios. I'm using the modern Greek pronunciation deliberately because that's what we did at Atlanta Bible College and we do it at Harvard too. So that's the Greek, and the Hebrew is Shikut HaShomem. Occurs about 4 or 5 times in the book of Daniel. When you see that, now isn't that a sign? Wouldn't you think that's a sign of the end? I would think so. The end will come. When you see that abomination of desolation, which was spoken of through Daniel, most people don't look at it. Yes.
Sorry, hold on, before you get to Daniel.
Yes, please.
Just to go back to verse 13.
Mm-hmm.
So you conceded that the end there is could be...
Well, the end of your life doesn't matter. He who survives to the end.
But if you want to keep relative to the use of the end, as you have been
You
teaching,
can, but that one I wouldn't insist on. There, the sense in the context could be if you happen to live to the end of the age, that's fine. If you don't, it's still the end of your life.
because we just made a criticism that people change as they read this.
That's right. That's true.
But you conceded at 13.
I concede that one is arguable, but the 14 is not arguable, and verse 3 is the end of the age. Then the end will come. That's not the end of your life, clearly. That's the end of the age. The end of the age, verse 3, 5 times in Matthew, always the future, the end of the age.
Can you list the 5 times?
Absolutely. Let's list them. Have you got them right?
I've got 4 of them, I think.
Okay.
Matthew 13,
Matthew 13.
40 and 49.
Let's ask Sarah if she would to turn to the very important phrase, end of the age. Matthew 13,
40.
40.
So just as the tares are gathered up and burned with fire, so shall it be at the end of the age.
Good. Then,
And 49, so
49.
it will be at the end of the age. The
Read on.
angels will come forth and take out the wicked from among the righteous.
yes, read on.
And will throw them into the furnace of fire. In that place there will be weeping and gnashing of
Read on.
teeth. Have you understood all these things? They said to him, yes.
Isn't that great?
Matthew 13
what- Matthew
40
13,
and 49.
13,
and
13 and 49.
13, verse 40
40.
and
49.
49.
Chapter 13, verse 40 and verse 49. Right, more please.
Okay, then, well, I'm missing one. I don't know where the first one is. So then we have 24:3,
Yes,
and then we have 28:20.
yes. Okay, there must be another one in
There's one
13
more.
there. Let's find it. Let's get it. Must be in 13 there.
The end of the age, I got
In 39 and 40
39, 40,
and 40 and 49.
39, 40, and
Oh,
49.
okay, three
Found it.
verses in that.
3 there.
Yeah, 3 in that
That's
chapter.
Verse
The
39
verses,
of
yeah.
chapter 13 of Matthew, verse 40 of chapter 13 of Matthew, and also again in verse
49.
49.
So 39, 40, and 49.
Got it.
49. Okay.
There's 3. Now the one we're just reading in Matthew 24, verse 3, and also the one in the Great Commission, I will be with you till the Syntelia tu Ionos, the end of the age.
Matthew 28:20.
Matthew 28, verse 20.
The last verse of the book.
Most important. If you can detect what that means, those 5, then you know what the end of the age is. And it's obviously the future, right? People's faces shining like the sun in the kingdom, and people being burned up, the tares at the harvest, right? That's clearly future. It's the most important point, because people have been taught all of this in a very garbled fashion. Okay, we did that. Very good. And then you've got beyond 15. 15, it says, therefore, consequently, when you see the AFD, spoken of through Daniel, people make up their own version of the AFD. Jesus said no. Daniel's the one who describes the AFD, the abomination. Standing in the holy place. That strongly suggests a temple.
And strong suggests a person.
And is
Person.
in its parallel in Mark 13:14, it's deliberately a person. In the parallel is in Mark 13:14. Somebody could read that verse for us. The parallel, corroborating. What does that say? When you see 13:14.
When you see the abomination of desolation standing where he should not be,
Thank you.
let the reader understand, then those who are in Judea must flee to the mountains.
Got it. All right. The important point there is some of your
There's another
translations
one, too.
lost it.
2 Thessalonians 2:4.
Of course.
Talk about the man of lawlessness in verse 3,
Yes.
son of destruction. Verse 4, who opposes and exalts himself above every so-called God
Yeah.
or object of worship,
Yes.
so that he takes his seat in the
The
temple of God, displaying himself as being God.
That's exactly parallel, and the point there is that the temple strongly suggests a building, just like the holy place, standing in the temple, the abomination of the man of sin. When Paul, here's a slightly technical point, but an interesting one. When Paul introduces you as a temple, individually, we could say you are a temple of the Holy Spirit. Collectively, when he introduces you, he could say you are a temple, all of you, right? In 2 Thessalonians 2, he introduces the temple as the temple, which strongly suggests a real building. Quite apart from the fact that the sacrifices are going to be stopped in that building, you know that. That's strongly suggests a temple. I haven't got a temple yet, obviously. So, that's Mark 13:14, parallel to the one in Matthew about the abomination in the holy place. Let the reader understand. Have you got that? Sarah just read what Jesus said. Did you understand this? And they said, yes, we did. I like that. He's a good teacher, that Jesus. He's a very good teacher.
Just to add,
Yes.
before
What
we
else?
go on,
Mm-hmm.
the end of the age,
Yes.
just to add to, so you got Matthew 13,
Mm-hmm.
39 and 40,
Yes.
49.
Yes.
Mm-hmm.
And it all comes from Daniel 12, 13.
Yes.
as for you, Daniel, go
Hmm.
your way until the end of your life.
Yes.
I guess. For you will rest and rise again for your allotted
Hmm.
inheritance at the end of the age.
The end of the days, it's almost the same expression.
This
Same
is
idea.
the Amplified Bible.
Fine, it'll do well. It's actually the end of the days, but it's the same idea. You're going to rise in resurrection after you die, fall asleep in death. You're going to rise in resurrection at the end of the age, end of the days. That's good. Now, if you want an extra verse here, 1 Corinthians 15:23. If somebody could read that. 1 Corinthians 15:23. What does that say? He's listing the order of resurrection.
15:23.
Yes. Mm-hmm.
But each in his own order.
Yes.
Christ the firstfruits.
Mhm.
After that, those who are Christ at his coming.
Just stop there if you would, please. That's the parousia. Those who belong to Christ will be raised, resurrected at his parousia. So if you can detect where the parousia is, you've also found out where the resurrection is, right? I remember starting the New Testament classes so often at the college. I start with that verse, because that puts a stake in, right? Equates the parousia with the resurrection. Or each in his own order. Christ the firstfruits. After that, it doesn't say next day, it says next stage, those who belong to Christ will be resurrected at his parousia, second coming. Then comes the end, probably the end of the resurrection. He's referring to the second resurrection. Then comes the end stage. But Christ must first rule on earth before that time. Okay, that's a slight difference. Sorry, what is this parallel?
And then comes the end when he hands over the kingdom
Yes.
to God and the Father.
That would be the end of the millennium.
That's after the millennium.
That's
and
right.
and after the great white throne
Right.
judgment.
He's talking about the order of
In
resurrection.
Jerusalem.
Yes, Christ, the first fruits, those who belong to him at his parousia. Then the end stage of the resurrection presumably would be then second resurrection, which is a resurrection to judgment, not to destroy everybody. Most important point, some in the second resurrection are saved. That depends on how much they could reasonably have known. Another subject, very wonderful one, that those who've never heard of Christ cannot be judged for not knowing Christ, right? That's just common sense. That's a different subject. Okay. Tom, are you going to say something? No, you just got his hand up. That's great. Yes.
Talk about the resurrection.
Yes, please.
For Christ says there'll be a resurrection of just and unjust.
Yes.
And a lot of people read that as everybody. See, this verse you just read shows those that belong to Christ
Right.
resurrected first.
Yes.
Of course, he'll be the first fruits. I guess we'd be the second fruits, and that's it.
Yes.
He'd be the first fruits.
Yes.
We'd be later. And then,
The harvest.
like I said, comes an end.
Yeah.
I'm assuming you're saying it's the second
Yes.
resurrection,
That's what I'm implying.
which would be the unjust.
Exactly right. And then you can add Luke 14:14,
Not
which
just the
says,
unjust, but those who never heard.
yes,
Yeah,
but they're
well,
unjust at
may
that
or may
point.
not be just. We don't know. They
Right,
didn't live
right.
long
They're
enough.
unjust at the point they're resurrected until they're sorted out. Anyway, you're exactly right. 14:14 of Luke says, you will be rewarded at the resurrection of the just. That's an important text. Luke 14:14. You will be rewarded at the resurrection of the just, implying there's another resurrection of the unjust. Additional point here, in Daniel 12 verse 2, it says, multitudes who are sleeping in the dust of the ground will wake up, some to the life of the age, and others to disgrace. The rabbis always said this implies two resurrections, separated. They understood that. Some raised here, and others, it doesn't expressly say that, but that's what the rabbis always understood it to be. So it's not a shock then when you get to Revelation 20 that you've got 1,000 years between the resurrections. And that's not a shock.
I think the Book of Enoch has two resurrections.
Yeah, separated by 400 years in some Jewish literature and so on. Yeah, good point. Okay, so then the abomination standing where he ought not to, that's the parallel in Mark 13:14.
I think it's interesting. He
Yep.
doesn't even say standing in the temple, just where he should not be.
Yes.
Let the reader understand. In other words, look at Daniel.
Exactly.
That will tell you where he should not be. I don't even have to say
Of
temple.
course not.
It is.
Yeah, that's
you should
true.
know. Yeah.
Matthew has the holy place and Mark
Right,
has...
he's standing
Where
where he shouldn't be.
Yeah.
Well,
Let
where
Daniel
is
tell you.
that? Go and look at Daniel.
Yeah, 'cause these are
They
people
don't.
that have grown up in the synagogues hearing these things
Yeah.
read
Right.
and taught. They knew the prophets. and-
Right,
Absolutely.
they didn't have to be told.
Yeah, I mean, the major point here is that Jesus knew those prophets. The book of Revelation is about 450 allusions or citations of the prophets. People say, well, I don't do prophecy. Wait a minute. I thought you wanted the mind of Jesus. Well, 22 chapters of Old Testament prophets. How well do you know Zephaniah? Can you do Hosea? What do you know about Zechariah? People don't. Then get busy. You've got a life, you've got to study those things.
By the way, verse.
Yeah, go ahead.
Go ahead.
What Sarah said reminds me of the high schooler's question, will this be on the test? I think Jesus is saying when he says, let the reader understand, this will be on the test.
Blue, you better.
Yeah, you better understand this one.
And then people say, well, this is not for salvation. Wait a minute, don't even go there. How about just being better? You don't have to argue necessarily about salvation, but how about improving, doing better than you were?
I was going to say this verse 15.
Mm-hmm.
This should destroy this whole historicism
Yes,
thing.
it should.
Because he calls Daniel what?
The prophet.
Prophet.
Yeah, absolutely.
That should be the end of that
Yes.
discussion.
Cool.
Jesus calls this person,
Yeah.
not some metaphorical Daniel, but he was a person
Right.
and he was a prophet, Jesus said.
Clearly.
And
he's-
what he said way back then
That should
has to
take
do
care
with
of
what Jesus is talking about
Exactly.
now, which is talking about
Right,
the
so
future.
So Jesus is speaking, that's a very good point. Jesus is speaking, what, 33
Yeah,
AD,
yeah,
whatever,
right.
right?
Right.
So he's speaking, I don't know, 500 years removed from a person he calls Daniel,
Mhm.
who was a prophet, he
Mhm.
says. So he's looking in the future. Again, he should destroy the Antiochus thing.
He should.
He should destroy all this.
But it didn't, because scholars
People don't believe Jesus.
with PhDs in the time of the Enlightenment, which is really the Endarkenment in some way, they decided that prophecy was impossible. I mean, the public doesn't know this. The public doesn't know about the evils of some medical practices. It doesn't know anything about the evils of scholarship. The scholars said Daniel was not written by Daniel.
Some scholars.
Some scholars.
Don't
Unbelieving scholars. Some, no, exactly, you're right. Some scholars said, Daniel didn't write Daniel because we know you cannot predict the future. We know that. Well, Jesus, I have to point out, didn't believe that. He thought Daniel had predicted stuff future to us, right? So it's a huge battle of the minds going on out there. Okay, 15 is a key verse. Then if you're in Judea, it doesn't say if you're in Georgia or Savannah or Carrollton. It doesn't say that expressly. To wait and see. If you're in Judea, you're to head out of there that very day. Don't let your flight be on the Sabbath. On one day, right? He means get out of there post-haste. Don't even go upstairs and get your clothes. Go out of the house by the stairs on the side of the house. Head for the hills. Now, it's true they did that in 70 AD too. But this is not talking about 70 AD as you're going to see. Very easily. Not at all. So, you flee, that's what it says, to the mountains. Then detail, right? If you're on the housetop, must not go down to get his things. Whoever's in the field, not go back to the house to get his cloak. Wow. Woe. Woe to those who are pregnant and to those who are nursing babes in those days of the Great Tribulation. Now listen carefully, historicists. Is it true for 2,000 years it's been tough for pregnant women? Obviously not.
Well, ask them. You're a man, see.
This is a short period of time. Wherever you place the Great Tribulation, don't tell me it's 2,000 years long.
It's a long pregnancy.
It's a long pregnancy. So this is to my historicist friends out there. Get this right, because you've been taught wrong on that point. So, it's tough on pregnant women. Unless those days, 2,000 years, I don't think so. Unless those days had been cut short, no life would survive. But for the sake of the elect, that's you, the true believers, the elect, those days will be restrained, short, kept short. 23, then, do we need an argument about then? Tote in Greek means next thing, at that time. Tote, then. If anyone lies to you, says to you, look, he's over here, or he's over there, Don't believe a word of it, got it? That's exactly what he said in Luke 17. They will say, hey, come and find the Christ out in the wilderness. Go rushing off there to find. No, 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 no. Why? Because the parousia is going to be so visible in public, right? You couldn't miss it. So if anybody says rush out here and there, don't believe a word of that. Because false messiahs, fake prophets will arise and will show great miracles, which isn't a proof of God doing anything, by the way. Any form of so-called miracle isn't a proof in itself. It could be the devil at work. Be careful. Signs and wonders. Again, reference to Paul. Remember, Paul speaks of the man of sin doing incredible signs and what. You see the parallel between Paul. Where have I been all these years? Only within the last month have I seen that Paul is simply repeating this. How important is it?
But verse 23
Yes.
is once again strong against the invisible
Absolutely.
coming, because he says, look,
Yes.
here is the Messiah,
Yes.
or there he is.
Absolutely.
So
Don't
it's
believe
about
it.
seeing something, not invisible.
Fake Christ. I like the current language. Fake news. Right? Fake news. What's the other one? False narrative. That's it. False narrative. We know about that in politics, right? Fake news, fake preaching, lying people backing themselves up with miracles. And then he says in 25, look, I've told you all of this in advance. Do you believe it? I do. There are some who say that Jesus said there will be no signs preceding the second coming. What? Excuse me. It's possible to be very sincere, possible to be a Unitarian, and still be very blind here. Behold, I've told you all this, well, we just read it, in advance. And the question was, what will be the sign of your parousia and end of the age, you see? It fits beautifully.
Are you going to
Before we
make...
go further, there's
Yeah, go ahead.
Yeah.
What have we got?
several things here. Well, several, but verse 21,
Mm-hmm.
talking about that there will be a great tribulation such as not occurred since the
That's right.
beginning of the world until now, the time of Jesus.
I left it
nor
out.
Ever.
Right.
I don't know if you went past that.
No, I did. I missed it out. Thank you so much. That's the one
Because-
verse I didn't want to live out.
Because, well, there's been a whole discussion on the, did you post that, Carlos? The Great Tribulation in the past, present, or future? Oh my goodness, the things people are saying.
When is
It's-
it? That was
it's
actually-
it's
when is the
shocking.
Great Tribulation?
Some of them think this is the Great Tribulation present,
Mhm.
right now, this is it.
Right.
And I said to this person, I don't know where you live, but at my house it's pretty peaceful right now. And the person answered back and said, well, have you studied the history of the Jews and you know how much persecution there?
Pretty peaceful
Well,
in Israel right now.
That's what I'm thinking. I know, I said I did. I said it's peaceful in
Tel Aviv
Israel,
is
and the
not.
Jews in America are peaceful, and you know they're not being persecuted right now as a time that has never been. You know, that's just
I'm
absurd.
glad you took us back. I left that out inadvertently. Verse 21 is the verse. And you add to your armaments there, your arguments, tell me, if the Great Tribulation is on now, is it hard for pregnant women? That's key. People don't get that argument. That's key. The days of the tribulation,
Yeah.
tough for pregnant women. Are you going to sit there and tell me this is true of today? That's false. It's a lie. No, it could not be now. You see, what has happened is that people say, well, the Great Tribulation was in 70 AD. And then we're going to get to a verse, a very embarrassing verse, which says, immediately after the Great Tribulation, I'm coming back. What are we going to do? Oh, no problem. We'll stretch that Great Tribulation over 2,000 years. You see how bad that is? Somebody lied. Put your finger on it. But I'm talking here about Unitarian people who believe in the kingdom, and they were taught wrong. And I'm trying my best to sort this out.
Who would sit in this room with us right now and believe what we believe, and yet
And they would argue
have
with
this really
That's
wrong.
what we're subtly working at. So thanks for going back to 21 is the verse. For then, that's to say, just after the detail about fleeing in the winter of the Sabbath. The Sabbath, you know, they closed the door in Israel. It doesn't mean to say you're keeping the Sabbath. Mark doesn't even mention that. Matthew notes that it's harder to get out of there. When we were in Israel, they were trying to stone to death, hurling rocks at a boy who was roller skating on Saturday. We saw that.
Wow.
So it's harder to get out. That's reasonable. It's nothing to do with us keeping the Sabbath.
Well, and on the housetop,
Yes.
sitting in the housetop, and somebody saying, I mean, that's our evangelical friends think that this is the rapture. That's
The
somebody's.
pre-tribulation rapture, excuse me.
Well, I said the evangelical.
Yes.
You know.
They think it's the pre-tribulation rapture. Do they really?
Right. That's what they think. That's where they get it right here.
Really? Why?
Like
I
a
don't
comment on
get
the
it.
housetop, since you brought it up.
Yeah.
This is just, I'm just running it past you. It's interesting. Commentary I read this morning.
Yeah.
It talked about, where he talks about, let him who's on the housetop not go down.
Yeah.
Now, I don't know. I'd have to do some research on
Because
it.
he's
But
closer
the
and on
houses
his
were
way to
built
heaven.
so close together that if you're going to flee, you could flee across the housetop, and then you could get to the gate quicker than coming back down.
Ah.
Right.
I don't know. This is true. It's in the commentary. That's kind of interesting.
Well, either that or you have stairs on the outside
Yeah,
and go down.
but what the point was, the buildings were actually
Yeah,
close enough
I
to
see.
flat,
Oh.
Yeah.
and you could just
To run.
run on top of the roof. Get away.
But if you believe you're going to be raptured, you're that much closer.
Right, right. You're gonna hit
Why
start.
go climb down when you're going to be taken up?
Michelle's making a good point here. There is no pre-tribulation rapture in this chapter, period. Where is it? Nothing about it. And by the way, it's not just a pre-tribulation rapture, it's a pre-tribulation resurrection rapture. That's what they believe in. You must always remind them of that. The people who believe in a pre-tribulation, pre-Great Tribulation rapture don't tell you that they actually believe in a pre-Great Tribulation resurrection of the faithful dead and rapture. You have to remind them that. See what they're doing? They're playing games with themselves. It's painful.
Just a question
They're
on
in
the
heaven already.
grammar here.
Yeah.
Might be a bit technical, but are we reading into it the word great? Does the Greek just have tribulation?
No.
For at that time there will be, in your translations, you have a terrible time of tribulation.
We'll read the verse from the NASU. What have we got?
In your translation, you have, actually there's a typo.
Yeah.
Anyway, you have time of tribulation, you don't have the great tribulation.
Well, I should have.
Some
It'd be
do
better.
have,
No,
others have great suffering,
Yeah.
but are we reading into
No.
it
No, the word great is right there. I should.
in the Greek?
Yeah, of course.
Yeah.
Then there will be merali, merali in Greek. Great tribulation. I should
So why
have done.
don't
Mega, I like
translations?
all over the world.
Oh, probably yes. That I'm not quite clear about. Whether Hawaii is affected by this, I don't know. I'll leave that open. The world, you know, in the Bible tends to be the Middle Eastern world. That's an open question.
That is a question, though.
Yes.
Is it
Yeah.
everybody in the United States going to be suffering as much as
No idea.
probably
I don't know
Middle
that for
East,
sure.
or, like
But
you
the word
said,
great is certainly there, and we
Fiji.
should put it back in the translation.
Fiji.
With regards to that, now, I've read different viewpoints on that. Presumably there'd be marrying and giving in marriage, and life will kind of be going on in
Right.
normal, certain parts
That's
of the
right.
world anyway.
That sounds like that.
Like in the days of Noah.
That's right.
So
Right.
it's limited.
Suggests a limited thing rather than worldwide. On that argument, it does. Yes.
The
Yep.
Greek here,
Yeah.
gar tote,
Yes.
ellipsis,
Mm-hmm. Megali.
megali.
Yes, great.
So
Great
how
tribulation.
come a lot of translation paraphrases just don't have great tribulation?
Well, if you go to Revelation
Well, you
7:14,
don't have it.
He has a terrible time of tribulation.
A terrible time of tribulation.
That's the same way of.
But if you want to keep to the great tribulation.
yeah, I don't need to. Revelation 7:14, that will do it. Let's see what we did in 7:14 of Revelation.
You would have said that was great.
While you turn
Yeah.
in there,
We're back.
Yeah.
Greg online says he studied rapture theories, pre, post,
Yeah,
mid.
yeah, yeah.
That some people believe in multiple raptures.
Yes.
Yeah.
Great.
Okay, we'll look at that passage too. But 7:14, let's look at that in Revelation. I said to him, my Lord, talking to the angel, you know, and he said to me, these are the ones who came out of
Great.
the Great Tribulation. In Greek, the tribulation, the great one. So it's an unparalleled time, therefore it is, of course, the great. So the word merali is in Matthew, it's also in Revelation 7:14. There's nothing to argue
There's
about
just no way to say in the history of the world, even though there's been a whole lot of bad, horrible stuff happen,
that. Exactly.
that has happened yet.
Yeah. You see, what we're talking about today,
Much worse than
is the flood a big event
It's everything.
when 8 human beings survived? We're talking about something like the flood. This should be preached all the time. This is awful material. It's not minor prophecy stuff. It's like the flood. If you had advanced knowledge of the flood coming, would you find that interesting in sermons? I would think so. Noah did. He built that ark for how long? A year or so, didn't he? That's amazing. He said, what's this crazy guy doing? So we're talking about stuff that Jesus obviously felt important.
Thomas.
Yeah.
And,
Anthony,
Yes, Tom.
you know, it occurs to me that if you're going to believe in the rapture and all that,
Yes,
for preterism, that all occurred in AD 70.
it did.
You have to believe that Rome
Yeah.
was the,
Antichrist.
yeah.
Oh, they do.
Well, Titus, they say, was.
Titus Epistles.
Oh, that's BC.
Yeah.
Yeah,
I'm sorry.
representing Rome.
Antiochus is BC, Rome in AD 70. That's AD 70.
Right. But who was the one that represented the Antichrist in amongst the Roman soldiers?
Nobody
There's no one-
knows.
there's no one that fits the-
Titus.
Titus or John the Scala, a Jewish person, or
No,
Nero,
Titus.
or
Titus said,
Caligula.
Yeah, but Nero was
No,
later,
no.
right?
Yeah.
Later.
No, but the AD 70 Tom is Titus. He's the Antichrist figure.
Yes, that's
He
what it is.
destroys the temple.
That's what I think.
Yeah.
And was he
General
an
or the
Assyrian?
emperor?
No?
It would
What
have to
was
be.
he?
Titus
There was
was
a general, then he became an emperor.
That would
Post.
be
Okay.
the Assyrian.
Sorry?
He would be the Assyrian.
No, but you got your point is,
Yeah.
well taken. Titus was a Roman. He wasn't of Assyrian or Arabic.
That's who's supposed to be the Antichrist.
Right, exactly.
Yeah.
Oh yeah, this. Antiochus is the closest because he does seem to have been.
He's
Assyrian, but
eight.
he didn't meet a lot of requirements.
Well, we got 2 points to
But
come
did they
against
all
that.
have marks of the beast and all that at that
No.
time?
No.
We've
Was
got
there
two
mark of
major
the
points,
beast?
though,
Could they not buy
do
and
with it.
sell because they had, whoever didn't have the mark of the beast, but they must throw out the book of Revelation. They must not. think
Well,
that
all the
it's-
qualifications also, these people did not meet.
Well, let's do two major ones we haven't mentioned. Let me prove to you that Titus could not be it. Go to 2 Thessalonians 2, if you would. This is the staggering parallel between what Paul says and Jesus.
The breadth of his.
2 Thessalonians chapter 2 and verse 8. He's describing the man of sin who has to come first before the second coming. And into 8. Then that lawless one, the man of sin, the man of lawlessness, either phrase is fine, will be revealed, whom the Lord Jesus, that is, will slay with the breath of his mouth and bring to an end by the appearance of his parousia. Got it? There's your argument. That should silence everybody. Did Titus die at the hands of the parousia of Jesus? No. Did John the Scala? No. Did Caligula? No. Did Nero? Nero committed suicide? No. This text, and this only came to me strongly within the last 2 months, this text absolutely nails it, doesn't it?
Just to represent
Yeah.
the people, the position we're criticizing,
Yeah.
rightly, like Trinitarians don't like
Yeah,
us to.
sure.
They separate, as you, I don't know if it's important for you to
Separate what?
state that these sections in Paul are not in relation to the Olivet prophecy. In other words, they're two separate things. They're reading Jesus
Yes.
in 70 or
Yes, all right.
100
Okay.
and what
Okay.
was it, 33
Mhm.
BC, and Paul, they are
Okay.
some of them do place this section in the future.
Okay?
So,
Then they have two parousias. So Jesus is talking
well,
about
they wouldn't say that.
but
because-
they're doing it because Jesus is talking about the parousia.
I'm
Nail it.
just telling you. What
Yeah, but we have to nail that. Is Jesus talking about the parousia in Matthew 24? Yes. Is Paul talking about the parousia in 2 Thessalonians 2? Yes. Don't let them get away with that. For their own benefit. You're not trying to win the argument. You're trying to help these dear people
the
not...
parousia in Matthew 24, they interpret as yes, it was a coming, but a coming judgment of God.
But it's the parousia.
And in Paul, the coming is expressed.
That's another
as
parousia. I
future
told you
coming.
1 into 2, right? You divide everything into 2 and it's chaos. I want you to be doing this out there. It's very interesting. You'll get tired of it very quickly.
Right, because if you give them an answer like what you're saying,
Yeah.
it makes perfect sense. They have some other answer and go, you know. this-
Yeah, all I'm
some
saying
other
is that
default thing.
when
Yes.
we say that,
Yes.
all I'm saying is
Yes.
they say, no, we're not saying there's two comings of Christ.
They are.
What
Yes.
we're saying is that Christ is describing the coming of God's judgment.
Yes.
And Paul is describing the second coming.
Yes, but you see, you allowed them to get off the hook there. Both sections is parousia.
And if Jesus, if the kingdom's already here among us, Jesus is among us,
Yeah.
and his kingdom's here,
Kingdoms.
why does it even matter
It doesn't matter.
about anybody?
Then the bottom line, are you ruling the world? Yes or no? Are you ruling the world with Messiah? Because that's what happens at the second coming. That's the question. Because they don't talk about us ruling the world much at all. But are you? And Paul says that's a heresy. Our beloved brother Paul is to deal with all of these same lies. What's so staggering? There are people, he says, who say the resurrection has already happened. That's what those people are saying. If you say there's parousia in the 2nd century, then you're saying the resurrection has happened. You're applying it. You're not going to say it, shh, but you're applying it. That's why I gave you 1 Corinthians 15:23, that the parousia is the same event as the resurrection of the dead.
Like you
It all
have.
happened at one time.
It does.
Yeah.
But if it happened in 70 AD, then the resurrection has happened. Paul damns that as a cursed error.
See, like you have said
Yeah.
in the past,
Yeah.
they split a lot of things.
Of course.
Like
One
Jesus
is
has
two.
been split, his double
Of course,
nature,
one is
right,
two.
and so on.
Yeah.
So now with the prophecy here, they split. They are pitted once again. Paul really
Cool.
against Jesus,
Absolutely.
because to them,
Yeah.
Jesus is telling one story. Let's say. That's why when you say they have a double parousia of Christ,
Yes.
they would say, no, that's not what we're saying. You know, I'm just telling you how
Yeah,
it is.
okay, well,
That's how they will lie their way out of an impossible situation. Let me quote you
You
Jesus.
said that.
He asked, was the baptism of John the Baptist from heaven, or was it a man-made thing? And they figured out, they said, well, now if we say it's from heaven, then we're in trouble. If we say it's a man-made thing, then the people are going to be mad at us. So we'll go, shh, this is exactly, nothing has changed, folks. Internet, email, endless, is exactly like this. Your job, our job, is to try to help some people, because we were helped. The Christadelphians gently came to us and said, wait a minute, Anthony, your two gods are wrong. Tell me. Then they said there's no devil. Tell me, we've been wrong, maybe there's no devil. Let's look at that. 2 years later, then we found the Abrahamics. This is our story. Our story is very easy. We didn't get straightened out on the devil for that, right? Couldn't go to fellowship because we believe still that there was the devil. All right, now we're really kicked out of every denomination. What are we going to do? We believe there's a devil, can't go to the Christadelphians, cannot be in fellowship with them. We believe in one God, cannot go to any Baptist church because they'll kick you out of there. Now what are we going to do? We got on our knees, we did. Bible attested. Oh God, what should we do for the rest of our careers? She's from Michigan. So a lot of good people from Michigan. We came over here and we found the Abrahamics. They were the only people who would accept us in fellowship.
Sorry, just to go back to one point I found about the word itself, translated or paraphrased second coming,
Yeah,
parousia.
yeah.
We use it a lot.
Yes.
I found that it's always used for someone's physical,
Of course.
like you said, Kay, her presence,
The presence
physical.
is she came.
So it's always used
Yeah, of
that
course,
way. And I got 1 Corinthians, 2 Corinthians, Philippians, and so on.
Right.
Except apparently when Jesus uses it
Where?
in Matthew 24. So it's
Wait a minute. You say accept?
According
According
to
to
according
them.
to them.
All right.
Yes.
According to them.
Whoever they
so
are.
when you look at, not to get too technical here, but it's an important point. If a certain word is used in a certain way all the time,
Yes.
and
That's
then
what
you
it
go and change the meaning,
That's right.
I don't.
Well, no, that's impossible. And he's right. The noun parousia, not talking about the verb coming. The noun parousia is a technical expression, meaning always, when used of Jesus now, because it can be used of human beings. Parousia can. And is. The Antichrist,
Right.
excellent. The Antichrist himself has a parousia. It's a counterfeit, you see that? And it's backed up by all sorts of miracles. People, wow! And then they fall for it. So
that's
you're right.
correct,
Yes,
But
right?
it also,
Great point.
wait, you didn't finish your sentence.
Yeah.
So it always means,
It always, the noun parousia, used in connection with Jesus, always means his visible, single arrival.
Not the first time he arrived.
Never.
but the second.
Never. These are important distinctions. Never, ever,
Not
ever.
His, not his birth.
Not his birth,
His
never.
coming to earth as a child born.
Never, never, never.
Well, what we're hitting here is the JW idea that it's an invisible, but parousia never means invisible.
No.
It's always a physical presence of someone.
What about the preacher of rapture then? Preacher of rapture, resurrection also fails because that's an invisible event too.
Right.
Except the cars will go off, running off the
Left
Can I
behind.
mention a comment?
Yes,
here?
please.
Dan Shaw wants to know who will be persecuted. Orthodox people, which does he mean Jews by that because he's Jewish?
I'm not sure. I see.
Orthodox people or believers of Jesus' gospel?
Oh, both. Well, anybody who's got the truth in any way is going to be persecuted. Mainly during the Great Tribulation time. If you haven't escaped, we haven't said this, but in the Philadelphia church, if you've been faithful to the word, you don't need to go through the Great Tribulation. Not by going to heaven, but by escaping on earth. You wouldn't be persecuted, you'll be hiding. That's true. Then anybody who needs to be tribulated, right? If you need to have that refining process, then God will let you be in the Great Tribulation, and there you will be persecuted and some killed. That's the answer to that. Now, any Jew who's sort of coming
And
to the
those who
faith...
made it through will receive the white robes and...
Of course, absolutely. So, the tribulation is a refining process also on Israel, the nation. This is a very important point. The nation of Israel,
I
which
think
is
that's
now...
what he meant by Orthodox people.
I'm not quite sure what he means by Orthodox.
Documentary.
Yeah.
I'm asking.
Yeah,
No,
that's
I
nice.
think he means Jewish people.
Yes, well then, they too. The Great Tribulation is on them.
Mm.
That's actually the main point of it. It's the time of God's wrath on Israel to bring them to their senses. And if we needed that as Christians, we could go through it too.
And so it makes a whole lot of sense to have it be an Assyrian or somebody
Oh, yes.
of Mideast
Absolutely.
rather than a pope in Rome or something.
Right,
Because as the world is heading, I mean, the world could change by then
right,
at
of
that
course.
time, but as it's heading, we certainly know that the Assyrian or whatever you want,
Absolutely.
you know,
Yep.
Muslim types
Middle
are
Eastern person.
persecuting the
Absolutely.
Jews.
Yeah, that's another subject, but the bottom line argument there is it's the king of the north in Daniel 11 who is the bad guy. And he's the one that Jesus quotes as putting his abomination. King of the north. That's not west. That's not Rome. King of the north would be Assyria, would be Iran, Iraq, Russia possibly.
Or North Korea.
North Korea probably not.
Let me say, Ingrid
Yes.
quotes Daniel 12:1. At
Yes.
that time, Michael, the great prince who
Yes.
watches over your people,
Yes.
will arise.
Mhm.
There will be a time of distress unlike any other from the nation's beginning up to that time.
Mhm.
But at that time, your own people, all those whose names are found written in the book, will
Mhm.
escape.
Of course. And many, next line, and many who sleep in the dust of the ground will arise. That's the resurrection. It's a brilliant point. In fact, if you want to just do this argument with your friends in 5 minutes, Daniel 11:45, the death of the final king of the north. Daniel 12:1, next verse, no chapter break. Next verse is the Great Tribulation. You can only have one unique Great Tribulation. You can't have two. If it's unique, it's unique. It's never been like that and never will be again. You can only have one. It's in Daniel 12, verse 1. Verse 2, Daniel 12:2 is the resurrection of the dead. Now, if I am really confused, I'll say, wait a minute. Many of those who sleep in the dust of the ground will rise is not resurrection. Let me give you the fake news, false narrative on that one. I got it in an email yesterday. What that means when it says that many who are sleeping in the dust of the ground will awake, it means that those people came out of 70 AD and began preaching. Oh, yes. I perhaps shouldn't use public word dementia, but listen, you're dealing with people who have been deceived. Have we been deceived? Yes. What are we going to do to help them? People are very grateful, by the way, for being helped.
By the way, to Tom's point about Titus, Tom,
Yes.
11:45
Yes.
is one of the qualifications that the Antichrist figure
Yes.
meets, that he comes to his end,
Yes.
i.e. he's killed, he
Yes.
dies. Antiochus wasn't killed in the land anyway.
Right.
And Titus, obviously, he went on to become emperor, so...
He
that's
died
okay.
18 years later, naturally.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Right, doesn't fit.
It doesn't fit. Got it. Doesn't fit. Doesn't match. 2 Thessalonians 2:8 will yet change the world. The Antichrist, whoever he is, the bad guy, is going to be killed by Jesus at Jesus' parousia. The noun parousia only and always used of Jesus only means his visible second coming. I love the Bible, you know, it's so clear. You can't fool with that. You can, but you shouldn't fool with it. That's very easy. So we are post-tribulational futurists. We are Adventists from 1850. We don't believe in a pre-Great Tribulation rapture. We believe in a post-tribulation, because Jesus said immediately after. We haven't got to it. Let's move on. This is exciting stuff. Okay, where are we then? Okay, we've done, Michelle took us back to the key verse, which is 21, which is equal, in your margin there, equal to Daniel 12, verse 1. That's to say Matthew 24. 21 is exactly a verbatim quotation. So,
and then 22, we have to cover.
22, we're getting to 22. Unless those days have been cut short, doesn't sound like 2,000 years. Nobody would have been rescued. But for the sake of the elect, the faithful ones, those days of the Great Tribulation will be cut short. Then, at that time, if anyone says to you, look, he's out here, don't believe it, we did that. Behold, I tell you in advance, 25, 26. So if they say to you, wrongly, he's in the wilderness, don't believe a word of it. Fake news, false narrative. For just as the light... Oh, listen to this one. How about an invisible second coming in 1914? That's only 10 million Jehovah's Witnesses, your friends out there. What are you doing for them? We're going to try to help them. Antoine is working at this. Just as the lightning, as to say, invisible lightning. I don't think so. Just as the lightning comes from the east and flashes to the west, so will the parousia. Let's use that word, parousia. Second coming. Technical term for the second coming.
What do they do with that verse?
What's it?
Twist.
What do they do with any verse they don't like? They go, they say, I'm not telling.
It's heat lightning, you know.
A very good example, whether this was invisible or not, is the appearance of the angels
Yes.
at the tomb. They're described the same.
Yes.
Their appearance was like lightning.
Yes, good point.
So were they invisible angels? That the
Invisible
people,
angels.
we saw invisible angels. 28:3.
I come back to the text in 2 Peter. It says, if you twist the scriptures, you're ruined. Now, God is merciful. He doesn't curse you, you know, without time. I see that, but it's not wise to be twisting the verses. Okay, so there's the lightning. So will the parousia, second coming, of the Son of Man be. Parousia, by the way, is 20 times in the New Testament, not always of Jesus. You can have Titus, his appearance, meaning his arrival. It means arrival. In the case of Jesus, always means his second coming. It occurs 24 times in the New Testament in total. Now, wherever the corpse is, I'm going to leave that one alone. The buzzards will be there. Wherever the corpse is, the buzzards, the vultures. I have to say that buzzard in America means a vulture. In England, it means an eagle. But I've seen them on the road recently, and I stopped the car and I watched this because it's a biblical image, right? What
Does
the
anybody
corpse
tell
is
you
here.
this applies to you?
What's that?
Do you get this scripture
Yeah,
all
oh
the
yes.
time?
And I've had that. Oh yes, there's an article out there by William Dankenbring. He says, look at his name, Buzzard, what do you expect of him? No, that's an Armstrong person.
Yeah.
Oh no, that's part of why I'm so wrong, because with a name like that, what do you expect? That's what William Dankenbring
Put that
writes.
on a banner up there. In England, a buzzard is an eagle.
Whatever that means, it could be, you know, is this the Antichrist being pecked away by the... I'm not sure, It's a Job quote. Now, 29 then is the text, along with 21, underlined in several colours and preached, I said to the students, 6 times every Sunday. Immediately after. All right, let's argue about the word immediately. I've been through this tiringly with people who are historians. Well, immediately doesn't mean immediately, it means suddenly.
Well, verse 29.
See what I'm saying?
Yeah, well, the sun will be
So
done.
that's
This
tribulation.
part is a quote.
Yeah.
It's a
Doesn't help
quote
much.
from the Old Testament.
They will go to any lengths to refuse the truth.
And
Immediately
let's
after.
find out where that is.
Epithels in Greek. Immediately. You can look it up in any dictionary, in English, in Greek, in Korean, in any language you like, it means immediately. There's no way of being clearer than that. Immediately following the tribulation. Which one are we talking about? The Great Tribulation, right? Obviously. There's only one. It has to be unique. It has to be one. Immediately after those days of the tribulation, the sun will be darkened. Oh, well, we can get rid of that. I mean, it's just political upheaval. The sun was darkened when Trump was elected, if you're on that side, or wasn't elected, whatever.
There's going to be an eclipse in a few weeks.
Exactly. Watch out. 1st of September. Tom will keep us appraised. When is the 1st of Tishri? Do you know? September? He'll look it up for us. He's very good in that area. Immédiatement afterwards, immediately after the tribulation of those days. Isn't this amazing where it's written? The tribulation of those days, if you might not get it right. Those which days? Those days. Mark has it even better. He says, in Mark's version, which is the parallel, Mark 13, whatever it is, immediately
19.
after. 19, thank you. 13, 19 Mark has, in those days, I'm tempted to say, after that, do you get this? I mean, it's just driving me crazy, dealing with this email stuff to help today. In those days, after that tribulation.
And Mark 13:24.
24, sorry.
Oh, I'm sorry.
24.
I have 19 right here, that'll be visible.
Yeah.
That part is parallel. It's mostly parallel. One of the great keys here is that Luke, Mark, and Matthew, they all run parallels. It's obviously the same talk, right? It's not a talk about, in Luke, it's all about 70 AD, and Matthew, it's not. That's just terribly complicated. No need for that. Immediately after the tribulation of those days, the sun will be darkened, the moon will not give its light. Those are cosmic signs, and Carlos will remind us that we had that event at the crucifixion, remember? The sun was darkened from 9 o'clock till 3 o'clock. Same language. This would be cosmic signs. And the stars will fall from heaven, whatever that means exactly. Meteorites or whatever. You know, you can deal with that from the scientific point. Fireworks, not 4th of July fireworks, I don't think so.
Luke
Yes.
21:27
Says,
then they will see.
then they will see. Then the sign of the Son of Man will appear. What that sign is exactly doesn't say. The sign that you were to observe was the great abomination, obviously. But this sign, there's going to be some spectacular event in the sky. This is his actual arrival. And all the tribes of the earth will mourn. That's a quote from Zechariah. Note that Jesus is always working out of the prophets. They will mourn. I would think they would, wouldn't they? It's going to be world news on a big scale. Then all the nations and the tribes will mourn. Tribes of the earth could be tribes in the land. It's slightly ambiguous. Is it in Hawaii? Is it in Timbuktu? It's not entirely clear. But tribes of the earth, the land, is quite possible there, will mourn, and they will see the Son of Man, who is Jesus, the human Jesus.
Well, that makes it a worldwide event.
Absolutely.
That makes the nations
whole world.
the
Okay.
nations.
The
'Cause
nations.
If then you see that stuff going on in the heavens.
That's right. They may not know what's going on, but that's
all.
It's going to affect the whole world. So
Yeah, okay.
The whole world.
all the tribes of the earth is the right translation there.
That clinches it.
Yeah, will mourn. They'll see the Son of Man coming on the clouds of heaven with power and great glory. And then, 31, he'll send forth his angels with a great trumpet. This again is parallel with Paul. Remember, Paul talks about the trumpet gathering together. Paul is copying this language. I hadn't seen that. Trumpet, angels, gathering, exactly 2 Thessalonians, exactly the same stuff. They will see. They will gather them then from 4 points of the compass.
Worldwide.
Yeah, worldwide. Now,
Yeah, it's a worldwide
That's
So
event.
correct.
can I
the elect, yes.
interject a few things?
Yes, please.
In verse 29,
Mm.
he's quoting Isaiah 13,
Yes,
talking about the sun and moon and
yes,
heaven,
which is
which
the
is
day of the
also
Lord.
the sixth seal.
Thank you.
The sixth seal of Revelation.
Good.
In Revelation 6:12 is heavenly signs.
Excellent. And what is the event in Isaiah 13?
In
while you're there?
Isaiah, okay, I'm going to read just, it's a few verses. It says,
What's it
Behold, the day of the Lord
Ah.
is coming,
Ah,
cruel, with fury and burning anger, to
Yes.
make the land a desolation,
yes.
and he will exterminate its sinners from it. For
Right.
the stars of heaven and their constellations will not flash forth their light. I think that's what it means by the stars falling,
Absolutely.
it's that they disappear,
Okay.
sort of.
Fine.
They're like, the sun will be dark
Yes.
when it rises, and the moon will not shed its light.
Wow.
Thus will I punish the world for its evil and the wicked for their iniquity.
That's brilliant.
Put an end to all their
That's
arrogance.
Matthew 24:29.
And that is
Exactly that.
also some other scriptures, Matthew 24:29,
Mhm.
Acts 2:20, and Joel 2:31.
Perfectly good. All of them. The Old Testament is full of that material. I was going to give you the one in 1 Thessalonians 4 in connection with the day of the Lord. If you just go to 1 Thessalonians
Yeah, while you're
4.
heading there, that
Mhm.
then when we get to the
Yep.
verse 31, and the great trumpet and the Son of Man in verse 30 coming, that is seventh seal,
Yes.
which is
Good.
the Jesus returning. I'm sorry, the last
Seventh trumpet is the last
Last
trumpet, the
trumpet.
resurrection
And that's
trumpet.
the seven seals of Revelation. all
Exactly right.
Wrapped up right there.
Sounds very audible, visible, and
Does, doesn't it?
Readable.
noisy.
There's a great point I want to make in 1 Thessalonians 4,
First,
15. 1 Thessalonians 4, 15. Again, the parallel with Jesus and Paul here. In verse 15 of 1 Thessalonians 4, verse 15. This we say to you, by the word of the Lord, came from Jesus himself, that we who are alive, we, includes any Christians it might be, it doesn't mean that Paul thought he was going to be alive, he might have thought, doesn't imply that, we is the group, we who are alive and remain until the, guess what word that is?
Parousia.
Ah, yes. Until the parousia of the Lord will not precede those who have fallen asleep in death. Here's how it goes. The Lord himself will descend from heaven with a shout. Look at the trumpet here. The voice of an archangel. Wow. That's Daniel 12:1. Voice of an archangel. And the, what else happens here? The voice,
Trumpet of God.
trumpet, there's the trumpet, seventh trumpet, last trumpet of 1 Corinthians 15, last trumpet of the seventh trumpet of Revelation, and the dead in Christ, those who are sleeping in the sleep of death, will rise first. They'll wake up and rise first. Then we who are alive and remain will be caught up together with them in the clouds to meet the Lord in the aera, the sublunar space, and in that way we'll always be with Jesus. Do you see how that defeats the notion that you can go to be with Christ at death? It's simply false. Please note that, before we get too friendly with evangelicals. I'm friendly with everybody. But listen, they are propagating the falsehood all the time that the dead are alive. Oh, they've gone to be with the Lord. Wait a minute. You just contradicted Paul. Don't go there. That's how you get to be with the Lord. That's a terrific verse for that. Now, here's my point. Paul is talking about the day of the Lord here. Look at 5:1. As to the times and seasons, you don't need to be told. For you yourselves know full well that the day of the Lord, that's the same as the parousia. Do you see that? Isn't that beautiful? He's talking about the parousia. Now, this is the text that the pre-rapture people use as the rapture, what they call the rapture, right? However, it's called the parousia here. So you've nailed them, two parousias. They don't want to say that. Oh, well, it's one parousia in 2 stages. Oh, yes, they'll try every trick in the book. What they're implying is there's a parousia 7 years before the parousia. There's 2 parousias. We are great liars as a human race. If we want to lie, we'll find a way of doing it. And that's what's going on. Okay.
Somebody else will believe it. Somebody will believe it.
They don't preach on this very much. How much of this are they getting in the local Methodist church?
Anthony, just quickly, the parallel to this in Luke 21,
Yes.
because Luke 21, the passage starting at verse 20,
Yes.
is a sort of classic text
Yes.
of preterist
Of
or
course.
historicism.
Of course.
And it's about how when you see Jerusalem surrounded by armies and so on, so it fits their 70 AD picture.
Yes.
It'll fit only if you stop there.
Yes.
Because if you go on to verse, 25,
Exactly.
it describes the coming of the Son of Man once again on the clouds.
Exactly parallel.
So it's important that we put this in parallels,
Of course.
and that's how actually you're taught at the university level to read certain chapters. So read, Luke 21 parallel to Matthew 24, Mark 13.
Of course.
And you go and pick out and see how they correspond to each other.
Exactly.
The point being that the things being described are all connected with
Yes.
the second coming of the Son of
So
Man.
tell us then, what is the parallel to when you see Jerusalem surrounded by armies? What is the parallel in Matthew and Mark there?
None.
The parallel.
I mean, not exactly like that, but
The parallel is when you see the abomination of desolation.
right. They don't have armies, and that's what
That's
I'm
right.
saying.
It's the same event.
But that's they
Of
love
course.
that
Of
passage
I know.
21, 20 to
I know.
24. That's like that 70 AD too.
They love it. But then they're stuck because if you've got the Great Tribulation beginning in 70 AD, when does it end? Immediately after the tribulation, Jesus comes back. Now they've got to explain how the tribulation, the Great Tribulation, can be 2,000 years long. You've got to ask them kindly to explain that. It's time when pregnant women are in difficulty. Don't tell me that's a 2,000-year period, isn't it?
And to go back to Matthew 24:30,
Yeah.
all the nations
Yes.
of the earth.
Right.
Now this is again, like Michelle and I said, this has to be a worldwide event because it's the second coming.
Mm.
It's Jesus
Mhm.
coming
Yes.
with all the angels
I think so.
and the whole, beautiful, glorious.
There would have already been
Yeah.
a big lot of destruction
Oh,
on the
yeah.
earth.
Yeah.
It's
Right.
not just people
No.
being persecuted, but there's
There's
burning of
calamities,
fire,
earthquakes,
and there's floods, and
like,
there's a lot of bad stuff happening on the earth.
there's natural disasters,
Right,
unprecedented.
disasters. Yeah.
And my point about verse 30 there is that they will mourn.
Yeah.
The nations will mourn. Did they mourn in 133 or 128 BC? Did they mourn in
No.
70
Well, I'm
AD?
sure they probably
Actually,
did.
they were victorious.
They didn't like
Yeah.
the Jews, they were probably pretty happy.
They were victorious, represented by Rome, as Tom stated. So it says there that the nations on the earth will mourn. Why? Because most of the nations are wicked, if not all.
You might get nailed there because check the word tribes there. What does it say in the Greek? All the tribes of the earth. What's the word for tribes there?
It's Gentiles.
Gentiles?
Tribes?
Don't know. I have to check.
Okay, you have to check that because I don't want you to be vulnerable. All the tribes of the land. We could translate that probably. What's the word for tribes? Not
Well,
nations.
what's the word for the second coming of Christ?
Can't see it.
It's coming in the air.
Exactly.
The
Well,
whole world will see it.
Groups of people.
Tribes.
So only
Tribes
the
could be
tribes in
described.
Israel will see him?
it's possible
The
on that
12
verse.
tribes.
Yeah.
And
Tribes.
more?
Tribes of the land.
Tribes of the land.
Okay,
It's possible. I don't want you to be vulnerable there.
right.
It's not the word for nations. I don't think so. All the
Okay.
tribes
Did
of
it
the
say
land.
nations and tribes though? Did it say that?
Well,
Probably.
usually they translate when the word,
Hmm.
the Greek word
How much
actually
you
usually is the same, right? Tribes or nations?
No.
No?
Mm-mm.
Okay.
Not. So that's a nice point there. That's
Tribes,
interesting.
all the tribes,
Let me
it
check.
doesn't say nations, it says all the tribes of Israel, that's verse 30.
Yeah.
24, 30.
All the tribes of the land.
And I,
The earth or land,
yeah, 'cause
but
we need to move
that's good.
along.
We're doing well.
We have a man, I guess this is a man, Nils Lofgren, I don't know him,
Okay.
maybe you do. Most followers of Christ in those days, I think is what he meant, believed that he would return in their lifetime.
Yes.
It's been 2,000 years,
Mhm.
where's Jesus?
That's exactly the point that Peter addressed. He said, people are saying, where's the promise of his, guess what word? Parousia.
Is it coming?
With God, a day is like 1,000 years. That's the answer to that one. I think actually God is allowing the world to make its own mistakes, probably. He's going to begin dealing with Israel seriously in that last 7-year period. He's dealing with them, got them back in the land already. Zionism is a mistake in the sense that that's not in faith. They're not there in faith. Even, this is a good point, the rabbis say Zionism is a big mistake. You cannot have the kingdom of Israel without the Messiah. Many rabbis understand that. Yes, they're back there as an unbelieving nation. That's okay. That's fine. It means that they now could be dealt the Great Tribulation. You see that? Through that process, is Romans 9 through 11. It's a big subject. They're going to come to repentance, a remnant of them. The Great Tribulation is going to force them, if you like, to come to faith.
And in answer to his question, just because we think 2,000 years is a long time, I mean, it may be 12,000 years. I mean, we don't know how long it's going to be. We don't know God's timing, but
We don't.
then he wants to know, he's written that, explain then, this is a
Mhm.
good one. Most certainly I tell you, this generation will not pass away until all these things are
Okay.
accomplished.
All right,
And that
great.
generation passed away long ago.
Okay, absolutely. And the word yene'ah there does not mean 40 years.
The word generation.
It does not mean 40 years. Okay, here's the point. If the word generation is supposed to mean 40 years, Jesus was a great false prophet. First point.
That's what they say.
I know.
That's one of
Well,
their
then
fruits.
they're unbelievers. We're going to try to get them to believe in the resurrection of Jesus. So, very important point. Yene'ah is the word. It doesn't mean race. That's yenos.
Just spell that.
Doesn't race. Genea. Yenea. It means, in Luke 16, you've got a good example. The children of this age are wiser in their financial dealings than the children of light. The word yenea is in there, meaning people of their own type. They're wiser in dealing with people of their own wicked type. That's one point. Yenea, still one. Is it Luke 16? Let's get that verse right. Let me get that one.
Luke 16:8.
Thank you. Read that, please, for us.
This present evil age. Oh, the whole
No,
verse.
16:8.
So you got, I got here Matthew 12:39,
Mm-hmm.
45, 16:4, Matthew 17:17, and Luke 16:8.
Yeah, that's more than we can handle in one mouthful. But what is
Anyone
Luke
has Luke 16:8?
16?
Oh,
Is it 8?
His master praised the unrighteous
Yes.
manager because he had acted
Mhm.
shrewdly. For the sons of this age are more shrewd in relation to their own
Kind.
kind
Yenea.
than the sons of light.
Yenea. The children of this age are smarter to people of their own yenea, type of person. Got it? Another one. He was ashamed of me and my words in this yenea generation. I'll be ashamed of them when I come back. You see that? This yenea, this present evil world. Similar thing in Proverbs 30. There's a type of person that has teeth like swords. There's a type of person who is proud and so on. The Greek word there is the same kind of word. It's not exactly the same, but the Hebrew is dor, D-O-R, which means an age. Do you really think that when Peter said, save yourself from the present generation, he means save yourself from the 40-year span? No. That's not right. So yenea does not have to mean 40 years. If it does, Christianity has failed. The Reverend Sidgwick, the clergyman in England, gave up the faith on this verse. He did. He resigned. He resigned.
I hope that all these people would.
Well, this guy says, seems like you need a scholar to explain the words of Christ.
You do. At this point, you do. You do need scholars. Jesus said, I will answer that. Jesus said, I'll send them scribes. I'll send them scholars, and they won't even listen to scholars.
You need teachers.
You do. For some technical aspects, you need scholars, yes.
Just like you need elders in the church.
Of course, you need
or
elders.
are you going to go elderless in a
Right.
church?
Doesn't matter.
Anthony, just
Right.
quickly, because we got to wrap it up.
Yes, we must.
Yes, so that word, phili?
Yes, tribes.
Tribes.
Yes.
It's used twice.
Okay.
There and in Apocalypse 1:7,
Okay.
when it's talking about look, his return with the clouds, every eye will see him,
Okay.
even those in prison. All the tribes on the earth will mourn
Okay.
because of him.
Mm-hmm.
And the commentaries say it could be nations
Right.
or
And
peoples.
that other
could
one
be
could
the
be.
tribes and
It's
so
a little bit ambiguous. Earth and land are ambiguous in the Bible. Meek will inherit the land, inherit the same thing. Slightly ambiguous. There are texts in Isaiah which say that people will be sent out from Jerusalem to announce the kingdom. They say it's happened. So I don't think the people in Timbuktu necessarily will know exactly what's happened. They'll know some frightful thing has happened. But let's go out and now share this news with them even after the second
You mean
coming
the second coming of
Christ, yes.
the second coming of Christ
Yes.
will be seen by all the nations of the world.
Something, but they won't know exactly what to make of it because some people have to go and be telling them.
Right, but the whole world will see the second coming, right?
Yes,
You're not saying it's a localized event.
probably not. I don't know exactly. I'm not sure.
We're not sure.
What's that? Yeah, here's it's a loud trumpet.
Yeah.
They may not know what has happened though.
Or you're not sure if the second coming of Christ will be seen by the whole world?
I'm not sure they will have understood what's happened necessarily. Otherwise, you wouldn't have to send people out to
That's
explain
not the question. The question is, will they see the second coming of Christ?
it. They will see probably. They will see an event. Absolutely, they'll
Right.
see.
The
Some
event,
respect,
yes.
yes,
I'm
the
being
event.
specific.
Yes, I would think so.
Yeah.
Is the sun
understanding
getting
is-
dark, the whole world will
Yes.
see that
Yes.
and wonder
Yes.
what's going
Oh,
on.
absolutely.
But there does have to be teaching coming out from Jerusalem.
Yes, right. I'm sure that everybody on earth will know some incredible
I
things
hope so.
happen. I would
Because
think
that's
so.
part of my vindication, that
Yeah.
everyone will be proven wrong. And
Anthony, do you have anything written, because we can't keep going on with
Yeah.
Mr. Mill and
Must
Mrs.
stop.
Walker in here.
well,
In the context of Matthew 24:34, a simple generation of 40 plus years is clear. Is what he's saying.
Well, then Jesus was a false prophet. Does he agree with that?
Do you have any, like an article?
Yes, we have. If you go to
Tons on the website.
tons.
Like this was
probably 80 articles I've written on all of this.
Yeah,
You go to the search engine at Restoration Fellowship and look that up. The major point here is that Jesus then, if you're prepared to say Jesus got it wrong, then, okay, I wouldn't go there. Yene a does not always mean 40 years. That's provable. It doesn't mean that in Luke, the text we just looked at, Luke 16. The other point is this, in Acts 1:6, they say to him, Lord, is it now finally, in Acts 1:6, is it finally the time that you're going to restore the kingdom, right? And Jesus said, listen, I just told you it was 40 years.
That's not what he said.
That's not what he said. In fact, he said, I don't know the long distances of time. That's the answer to that. He didn't know. Preterists are born of that one text. This is this verse, this generation. This produces preterists. And there's a logic in that because he includes the second coming there. When you see these events I've just described, the second coming, then 40 years, one generation, right? If you take it that way, you are automatically a preterist or an atheist.
And it leaves out the little thing about the establishment of the kingdom of God on earth and peace,
All that.
goodwill to all men.
Yes.
Just
Yeah,
leave
well,
it.
everything that we just talked about today,
Mhm.
you know, if Jesus is not going to return, you know, I mean, I don't think that if they think that all happened in that generation and it didn't happen in that generation, therefore Jesus lied.
That's right.
Well, what's this
That's his
all
point.
about?
No, but he's coming, and he has a right to be an unbeliever. That's fine. We don't discount questions from unbelievers. As long as you realize you're an unbeliever, that's fine. Your position is that Jesus was mistaken and wrong, false prophet. And
Yeah,
Jesus could have said one generation didn't say that.
Yeah, you don't have to agree with us.
No,
by the way,
of
for
course not.
listening to this.
Not
We
at
hope
all.
you go and search it out for
Absolutely.
yourself. Look at
Right.
what Anthony has written for the last 40 years.
Yeah.
Not that makes you right, but
It doesn't. I am only reflecting classical futurism. You see, again, the public doesn't know any history. This makes it hard.
All
The
the
earliest
church
church fathers, the earliest ones, the earliest church fathers, certainly before Augustine, who got it all wrong, they believed exactly what I'm saying here. Irenaeus, Lactantius, Commodianus, and the other one, Victorinus. I've got a nice article on that at our site about the
Justin
church
Martyr.
fathers.
Can I ask one more thing? Because I know
Yeah,
you're
then we need
wrapping
to.
it up, but
Yes.
this was another thing really big.
Yes.
It's in Luke 17:20.
Mm-hmm.
He says, now having been questioned
Yes.
by the Pharisees as when the kingdom of God was coming, he answered them and said, the kingdom of God is not coming with signs to be observed.
Mm-hmm.
Well, we just read about signs to be observed, so I want you to explain that.
That's another hour.
Nor will they say, look, here it is, or there it is, for behold, the kingdom of God is in your midst. So I was speaking with somebody that said that means that Jesus is, you know, that the kingdom of God, not Jesus, but the kingdom of God is now, the church. That we are, this is the kingdom.
This will contradict the entire rest of the Bible because you're not ruling with Christ. This is the major argument there is you are not ruling with Christ, therefore the kingdom has not come.
To
However,
them it was like, look, don't say, look, here's the kingdom, or
Right.
there's the kingdom.
we just read it.
Where
Right.
we've read all about the kingdom.
Yes.
So
Now,
Jesus
there
got
will
the
be a
picture
time
so clear.
when the kingdom is here, when we can say, here's the kingdom. We
course.
can point to it.
You can.
So,
But in this
what
passage,
is he
probably
doing?
the meaning is this. People will say wrongly, go to the wilderness to find him. It's not going to be that sort of observation. That's the context. It will not come with signs to be observed. Cannot be, obviously, the abomination. It must be something else. Because he says, don't go after them if they say he's out here. Because the kingdom of God will be, when it comes, in your all over, universal. Like lightning shining. That's what the Son of Man will be in his day. It says that in the very context. Lightning shining from east to west. That's what the Son of Man will be in his day. And I'm taking that present tense as a future then sense.
Well,
They
the
ask,
Son-
when is the kingdom?
Well, verse 21 says, the kingdom of God is in your midst, and my...
Will be in your midst, I would take
my,
that to be.
well, okay, mine has is.
Yes.
And then my margin says, or within you.
That's wrong.
And that's...
Kingdom of God within you is nonsense. It's
Talking to Pharisees.
talking to
but-
Pharisees too. It's very odd.
That's what I thought
Unbelievers.
too. He was just trying to...
It will contradict
The
everything else.
subject here is
But people-
false messiahs.
They
Same
don't
as
know
Matthew
anything.
24, by the way.
Yes.
So he's saying don't believe them if they
Yeah.
say the kingdom is here or there.
Yes.
Because it's not. It's not going to be, the kingdom is not going to be where these
Yeah.
false messiahs are telling you
Right.
Yeah.
it is. I think
The
that's
guy
also
with
a
some
false.
pitchforks and axes and
Right.
come follow me. And
That's probably what's meant with not with observation the meaning there is by looking at the sun and the stars and that sort of thing to see when they're in the right, that kind of thing. It's not by observing, that's the meaning of that word. Don't do that, because when it comes it will be visible all over.
You won't have to look
No.
to try to figure out
No.
where the stars
That's right.
lined up.
That's right.
correctly.
Or go out rushing into the wilderness, won't be localized. When it comes it'll be all over like lightning
Okay.
shining. It's probably right. Richard Hayes dealt with that, came to a conference. It's a disputed, but the King James is wrong there. Within you. That's just nonsense. Jesus never said the King of God is within you. That's not.
People build their entire faith on that.
They do.
Have to wrap it up, so part
Yep.
2 next time?
Part 2, that will be not next week. Carlos will be speaking
You're
next
away
week.
next Sunday.
Week, yes. God willing, back the next. We do some more. This is fun stuff for me because it's your interaction is so good.
Yeah.